Good day, friends of the Museum of South Texas History. My name is Francisco Guajardo. I am the CEO of the museum. And so we welcome you to this edition of Museum Pláticas. We're going to have a lot of energy in the show today. We will have two different conversations, one in the next segment, which is the first big segment that we have, when we'll bring on two trustees of the museum. And so they are Bill Martin and Sabrina Walker-Hernandez. And so you're just going to sense the energy with them. They're going to talk about our next fundraising event at the museum. And so we want to invite as many of you as can come out to participate in this event. And so we'll talk about that shortly. After that segment, then we will be joined by two entrepreneurs, community entrepreneurs, who have a vision that is both historical in nature and also very futuristic. And so we're going to get another dose of good, intense energy with those two other guests. And so those guests are Renee, Sánchez, Leal, and Cantú. And you're going to fall in love with all four characters we're going to have on the show today. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to talk about the museum with two of our trustees. So stay with us. Friends of the Museum of South Texas History, to our this month's installment of Museum Pláticas. So I have two guests with me today. And so I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves. They are trustees of the Museum of South Texas History. And perhaps you don't know them because they're actually relatively new to the museum, but they are not new to the work of, organizations and just being in community life. So I'm going to start with you, Sabrina. So Sabrina, if you can just tell the world who you are, where you're from, and maybe how it is that you came to the museum.
Well, my name is Sabrina Walker-Hernandez. That is my name, and where I'm from is I've lived in the Valley since 1992, but I grew up in North Carolina and Virginia. And I came to the museum by way of some great people like Lynn, like yourself. I just always admired what you do. And when there was an opportunity to be on this board, I just jumped at it. So thank you for having me. And the last thing I'm going to say is today is No Makeup Friday.
I couldn't tell.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question about your journey here. What is it that brings a girl like Sabrina down to South Texas?
Well, I was in the military. I was in the Army, and I was stationed in Fort Drum, New York. And I met my husband in Fort Drum, and he is from McAllen. And he said, where do you want to live when we leave the military. And I said I didn't want to go back to North Carolina or Virginia. And he said we can go to South Texas, Bill. And then he said, but I need to tell you something. He goes, there's no black people. And I said, it's the South. There's black people all over the South. And then when I got here, I was like, oh, I get it. So that's how I got here. And I absolutely love the culture. I love the community. I love the people that I get to meet and work with across the valley. It's home.
I have to tell you, Sabrina, that one of the highlights for me of just the last couple months has been when your grandkids have come into the museum. Yeah, like there's that one kid, who wants to be a paleontologist, he says, and he's only like 3 years old.
Yes.
I mean, grown-ups have trouble saying that word,
Yes.
but this one kid, Liam,
Latched onto it.
Yeah.
yes,
He
he owned it.
owned it. He's gonna
And
be a
so he was like in
paleontologist.
a little stroller, and he wants to be a paleontologist. So, you don't see that much, but
Yeah.
but tell me about this one kid, because I want him to go to the internet and then to see his grandma talk about him.
So Lim is really cool. He is going to be a paleontologist. We signed him up for soccer. Didn't go well. He's not going to be athletic at all. He shows up for the practice, and then when the game happens, he will not play. But he gets up and get his goodie bag. But he ask him anything about any dinosaur, he knows it. His Halloween costume has been something related to Jurassic Park. He's dressed up as the paleontologist in Jurassic Park, and his parents really encouraged that. His dad dressed up like a dinosaur in the suit, and his mom dressed up like the assistant to the paleontologist. So Lim is just I say Lim is Lim, and I truly believe that he will be a paleontologist. He knows everything about dinosaurs.
Wow.
Bones, I mean everything, like what they eat, what they don't eat, the names, some things I can't pronounce. So, but he was just fascinated.
It's amazing what sponges
Yeah.
at that age, which is why it's so important to get them in the museum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's got a little brother, this Liam kid, and so when the 3-year-old he's 3, right?
Yes.
When he talks, his little brother is like a sponge. His
Yeah.
little brother's like latching onto every syllable, it seems.
Yeah.
So he's a delight, and as is the family.
Thank you.
So Bill, introduce yourself to the world.
Sure.
Tell us, our friends of the museum who you are.
Sure. I'm Bill Martin. I've been in this community since I was born. I was born in Brownsville. And at about 4 years old, I sort of split my time. My mom was in San Antonio, my dad was here, and so I had split my time between the two communities. After graduation from college, Texas A&M, we're going to have a little A&M Longhorn banter at some point. I started work in San Antonio, and I ended up moving back to the Valley as a financial advisor. Been doing that for 25 years. And we've got 6 kids between my wife and I, and they've all spent a lot of time in the museum. I've been on school boards for a long time, but I decided that it was time to do something different. I've always just personally been a history buff. I love history, and I love my kids learning about history, and I felt like this is an awesome endeavor. And I had been approached in the past about being on the board of trustees, but it just didn't work out in terms of schedule and timing and everything else. And so this time when it did, I jumped and I was ready.
Well, that's terrific. Well, thank you for being a trustee, and Sabrina, thank you as well for being a trustee. So as the museum does its work, we have several fundraising events, like real signature fundraising events during the course of the year. The one that's absolutely historic that pretty much everybody knows about is the Fandango that we have in October, first Saturday in October. And so that's always like a smashing, success. We have other things that we do as an organization, and one of those other things that we do is the shootout. So we have the Great Historical Shootout, and so that's coming up in June. And the two of you happen to be trustees who are on the committee to, sort of like make it good, right?
Yes.
And so what do you have to say to our friends of the museum about this particular event? When, where, how can we get people involved? Tell us maybe a story or two about how this can be such a fun event.
Well, Bill, if you will allow me.
Go for it.
I know the when and the where, and that's going to be the limit of my knowledge. So the when is going to be on June the 18th, and the where is going to be at the Coyote Arms. And Bill will take over from there because he has all of the other details as far as what is clay shooting. I am new to this, but I do believe in the mission of the museum, so I am here to serve. And if you want to help further that mission by being involved with the clay shoot, please, by all means, reach out to us. Now, for the real perspective on clay shooting, here we go, Bill.
Well, first of all, it is June 18th. Registration to 8 a.m. We'll start shooting at 9 a.m., assuming everything's running on time. And we're going to do sporting clays. That's been the format of this tournament. Sporting clays is my favorite type of shooting of any kind of targets or even live birds. I much prefer shooting clays. It's kind of like going to a golf course. You have multiple stations, typically 10 to 15. Coyote Arms, I believe it's 15. We'll have 100 targets. Each station is throwing 2 targets from different directions, different angles, and it's really a great test of your shooting skill. And it's a lot of fun. You get wonderful feedback whenever you pull the trigger and the target breaks in the distance. It's a lot of fun. You have young kids, 14 and up, very often shooting, men, women, and competing really on a level playing field because the shotgun doesn't care the age or gender of the person holding it. So it's just a lot of fun. We're very fortunate to have a big sponsorship with HEB. Their True Texas barbecue is going to be served. That's brisket, it's ribs, it's sausage, and if you haven't had it before, they do a great job. And not only that, they're kicking in for prizes, and they're just a wonderful sponsor. We're going to have sponsors. We're going to have prizes for the first, second, and third place team, and there's still time to sign up. If you haven't signed up, get in touch with the museum and get your team together because it'll be a lot of fun. There'll be prizes again for the teams, but there's also a prize for the top shooter. In addition to that, this year we're going to have some bucket prizes, and that's going to be some really neat things like Costa sunglasses, a nature outing and brunch. There's a lot of
There's
good
some
items.
massages.
Oh yeah, massages. That's right, and a number of other really good items. So it's going to be a great day. We're going to have a blast, pardon the pun. And there's an opportunity to win some stuff and support the museum.
So I have a technical question
Sure.
because for the people out there like me. So how many people comprise of a team?
4 people in a team.
And you have to have your own shotgun, or
Yeah,
you
typically. Oh well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with sharing your shotgun with a teammate.
Okay.
But typically, if you're a shooter, you're gonna have a shotgun.
Okay, and you have to have your own ammo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 100 rounds of ammo at a minimum. Usually, you want to bring a little bit more than that because sometimes you have to reshoot if there's a no bird. That just means that there were supposed to be 2 thrown and only 1 came out, and so maybe you might shoot the first one. You got to reshoot both of them.
Okay.
So typically, I'd say bring 125.
Okay, and it's $600 per team.
600 per team, and
Okay.
if you'd like to be a sponsor, you don't want to shoot, but you'd like to sponsor the tournament, there are station sponsors for $350, and if you want to do both, I'm doing both. You can have a team and a sponsorship, and you kind of get a price break for $900. So would it be $600 and $350 for the sponsorship? But if you do both, it's $900.
Terrific. Well, what I remember is that last year it was a lot of fun. And last year was also kind of an interesting day because there was this torrential downpour.
I heard.
Oh my God, it rained
still-
like cats and dogs, and people still went out and did it. And so
Yeah.
these are committed people, who love to do this kind of thing. And so last year was a lot of fun, a lot of good energy, a lot of good community building, and we had a chance to, to really talk about the museum with people who ordinarily don't come to the museum. And so it's a real opportunity to do some good outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sabrina, thank you for all you do,
you.
and Bill, thank you for all you do as well. And so you guys have been terrific trustees. And so, okay, so now friends of the museum now know about the great historical shootout that we got coming up later this month. So thank you to Sabrina and to Bill, and welcome to the museum. And to friends, we will be back with, I think, a spirited conversation on the Citrus Theater when we return. So stay with us. This history. So if you are from Edinburgh y los alrededores, anywhere around the community, and you grew up, say, in the 1940s or 50s or 60s, 70s, maybe even the 80s, you probably have a story connected somehow to the Citrus Theater. The Citrus Theater, I think, is probably as iconic as any other entity that may be a building or a cultural hub of some sort in the Upper Valley. It's iconic, it's cultural, it's historical. And yet, the Citrus Theater has been now for probably the better part of 15 to 20 years a vulnerable building. It's a historic building. It doesn't have a historical landmark, I don't believe, slapped on it. But it is a building that is very historical in nature and very important to a number of people, not only in the Edinburgh community, but everywhere around here. And so something has been happening with the Echo in the last, I'd say maybe year or so. And so there's a story there, I think, to be told about what that is. And so I would like to invite to the set today, into this Plática, Cantú, and also Renee, Sánchez, Leal. So I'm gonna ask them to introduce themselves first so that our friends can know who they are, and then we're gonna move into the substance of the conversation vis-a-vis the Echo Hotel. So Renee, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Renee Sánchez Leal. I am the Director of Operations for Society 204, as well as the new Citrus Live project. I'm not originally from Edinburgh, so I can't say that I'm born and raised in this area and why I have the certain ties that I do, but I'm originally from Westlaco and love everything about history. And so when I was very younger, much younger, I used to come to the museum before the renovations and everything like that. So this was kind of my second home for very much of my childhood. And
Wow.
So history has always been integral to my knowledge and my story.
Okay, I guess I didn't know that
Yeah.
story, that you used to come as a kid to the museum.
I would drag my parents to bring me to the
Are you
museum.
serious? So what's that about? I mean, was that like you as a kid? Like, in the last segment we talked to Sabrina,
Yeah.
and so Sabrina's grandson Liam, he's like wants to be a paleontologist, so he wants to come and he wants to see the mammoth,
Yeah.
and he wants to see other things, the fossils and stuff. But you had something.
I was interested in knowing what the culture of the area was. So I'm half Hispanic and I'm half Anglo. And so my mom is originally from Ohio. And so culturally, I never always felt like I fit in here. And so I wanted to learn more about what it meant to be a Valleyite, to be part of the RGV Hispanic culture. And the best place to do that was here.
Wow. That's a cool endorsement of the museum. So we're
Welcome.
going to clip that and we're going to put it somewhere on the internet.
Now
So-
I have to follow that.
Sorry.
Please.
No, Nick, you be you. So who are you, Nick? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And that sort of thing.
Well, I'm Nick Cantú, and I've been a real estate agent / broker now for going on 19 years. I graduated from Edinburgh. My parents also graduated from Edinburgh, and so we like to think we claim Edinburgh as our hometown, and so we continue to reside. My parents actually live a couple houses down from where I live, and so real estate has been a big part of my family's business and livelihood. I have uncles that did construction and developments as well, and so got to kind of see all that coming up, growing up. Dinner time was kind of like a business meeting, if you may, talking about projects and developments, and so real estate didn't feel so far from my comfort zone. And so here we are, 19 years, and still kicking and enjoying every minute of it.
Wow.
To
How
say
about
the
that?
least.
Yeah. So there's something about the Sanchez and something about the Leal
Yeah.
that I can connect with directly, because
Yeah.
a number of Sanchez's were my students
I
when I
know.
was a teacher at Elsa High School, and I grew up on 3rd Street in Elsa, and on 2nd Street grew up the Leales.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was Obi Leal
Yeah.
and Riche Leal,
Yeah.
who's your
My father-in-law.
father-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then your husband,
Mm-hmm.
Rick, was my student
Yep.
back in maybe 91 or something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. Wow.
We won't age him.
We won't age him, okay. But today's conversation is about the citrus.
Mm-hmm.
So the citrus has been for sale for years. The citrus was so important. I remember coming to the theater when I was, maybe in high school. And my wife grew up on Mall Street here in Edinburgh, and used to come with her sisters and her father to watch the Westerns at the Citrus. So it was part of her almost like upbringing, but also like a social DNA. But that's the story of so many other people. I mean, you remember that online there was such traffic, by so many people who live really in different parts of the country and even from other parts of the world, who were saying, yes, I claim, the Citrus is part of my own identity. And so you guys moved into this building, the old JC Penney building, right? So who did that? Who moved into that building, and why, and what does it do now?
Well, I guess I'll take
That's
this
you.
one. So we had another location off of 107 that we were leasing, and that was coming to the end. And so we figured co-working was here to stay. And
When you say we, you mean who?
the team, Renee, the group, my parents. I have a big support system that helps reaffirm the decisions that we make and how we continue to expand. And so we felt that we were at a point that we should look for our own building. And so my mother she's a real estate agent as well, found that building and kept tugging on me, you need to go see this building. You need to go see this building. And, we were weighing options. At that time, we had another location in McAllen as well. And so looking at all the cards, wasn't until my father said, hey, you need to go look at this building. So I said, okay, if the big man thinks I need to go check this out. And I went on a Friday, and I was there till about 7 o'clock at night. And I was like, I could just see everything that we needed in that building, and it just had such unique character, a lot of unique finishings that you don't find in today's modern buildings. And so after that, it was like, yes, this is where we need to expand. And so we made that acquisition, closed in the latter part of February
Of 2020.
20.
Okay.
And COVID shutdowns start happening March 15th. And so kind of the blessing in disguise, I do a lot of leadership for the Association of Realtors. And so every month, pretty much, or every 6 weeks, I'd either have to be in Austin or Chicago or Washington. And so because none of that was happening, it allowed me to really hone in on the project. And I'm so happy that that kind of played out that way, because then comes our neighbor and was just floored with what we had done to the JCPenney building, and approached us on working out a deal with that building as well. And so,
What neighbor is this?
The former Busby Law Firm building.
correct.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
Okay, and so then you sort of expanded from the old JCPenney
so
building.
we open up, we go through all the remodel phase. We open up, and I would say about 9 months into our opening,
Less.
we started the construction of the project
yeah.
next door.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, any idea on historical notes on the old JCPenney building?
So we kept the original mosaic in the entrance, along with a lot of the crown moldings and the ceiling tiles. We did our best to preserve all that. Of course, she had been vacant herself for many years, and so we had to explore what we could keep and what we had to replace. And but we were happy with the finishings, especially like the original wood floors. The original hardwood floors were under an old green carpet, and honestly, the gentleman that did the floor for us was extremely proud. He does floor restorations all over the country, and he's like, or all over the state, excuse me, and he was like, this floor, the unique.
Well, because it's not hardwood. I guess we should specify. So it's a Douglas fir. And so when we kept calling them hardwoods, he corrected us, and he said, actually, that's a misnomer. He says, this is Douglas fir. It's the softest of the hardwoods. They don't use this wood anymore.
Correct. And a lot of like the character, like for example, you could actually see where the wood has absorbed the minerals from the nails. And so like just things of that nature that just like really, gives the building some character. And so I guess that's really where our draw to these historic buildings like the Citrus, things were made very different back then. And I guess, diving into what we saw at the Citrus, the bones behind what you could see was just amazing. I mean, you're talking steel I-beams that run through the second floor about this thick. So again, it's just so much character in these buildings, and they're here in downtown Edinburgh. We're just happy to be a part of being a little piece of giving them a little more life.
So you called it Society 204, as you're wearing on your shirt. So explain that.
So it's a co-working space, and co-working differentiates in that it's not an executive suites building. It's not a business center that we've typically and traditionally seen around the area. A co-working space is very many different enterprises, different levels of businesses, from a solopreneur to, we've got a trucking logistics brokerage that's headquartered out of our space as well. So we can accommodate different sizes of teams, and in that it creates this nurturing, fostering community of just success and productivity. So co-working takes all of these businesses, houses them under one roof, and now you've got, Nick likes to call it's a super hub of super nerds. And so we piggyback off of each other. So what your strengths are and what your business is may be something that's complementary or something that I need for my business. And we're not competitors, so you and I can work together to create business. And so I'm giving my business to you, you're giving your business to me.
And we really push the whole community, the team. We're really big about teamwork. And so, like, for example, being a real estate broker, tax questions or legal questions always come up in conversations. And so although I could field the question to a certain degree, but how much more valuable am I to my client when I could walk up the hall and bring a attorney or a CPA to speak on that matter, and then they're no competition to me. As a matter of fact, I'm rooting for them so that I could have more dialogue and better serve the client. And the one thing that we all share there is it's sink or swim. We're all our own little business, and so I think that's what really kind of brings us all together, because it's tough. There's better days. You know, everybody has their better days, and so we share the wins and the losses, excuse me, and you know, pick each other up, and so it makes work a interesting environment. It's
but
never the same.
exciting and creative,
Absolutely.
and like you have to be on the edge all the time. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
As you're working with others,
Yeah,
it sounds like.
especially when you come in, you know, over the weekend and be like, hey, I was at a barbecue. My sister's looking for a house. You know, I gave her your contact. And
There
it's
you
like,
go.
wow, you know,
Yeah,
like
perfect.
that whole fraternity feel
Yeah.
is really something that we really
So
embrace.
204 is the address.
Yes.
Correct.
204
East
Cano.
Cano.
East Cano, which used to be something else.
Yes.
That used to be.
I've seen the old like blueprints of what downtown Chapin used
Yeah.
to be, and
You
I
know,
can't
and
remember.
I'm sorry, I should know this, but maybe somebody's going to help us. And so it's a long name. I think it was one of the railroad executives.
Okay.
Like Mall and Loeb and you know
Mm-hmm.
McIntyre railroad
Yeah.
executives from the Southern Pacific Railroad. And so that street, before it was Cano was the Medal of Honor recipient, Second World War. He received the Medal of Honor right here in the town square back in 1946, I think it was.
It was the Distinguished Cross, the Medal of Honor he received.
The Distinguished Cross, thank you.
Yes, the Medal of Honor he received posthumously with his daughter.
Look at you, a
receiving
little
it.
historian.
Well, again, yeah,
You love history.
I love history, but
Yes.
we actually just celebrated there at Society 204
Uh-huh.
the Pedro Cano Day. So on April 26th, the state of Texas designated it as Pedro Cano Day, and so we had a little commemoration for him and everything like that. So I
And
do
we even
know
have
the story.
a painting still displayed by.
Yeah.
Cele Castillo.
Thank you.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
So
Yeah.
we still have it on our stage there displayed.
Nice, nice. Yeah. So we have a collection of letters from a World War II veteran who was writing in Spanish from 1942 all the way to 1945 in the European front, and he sent all those letters in Spanish to his mother who lived on the street.
Wow.
And so I'm like Krantz or something, but it was short for a longer name.
Okay.
And so that was the name of that street. Whereas 107 or University Drive was Harriman,
Okay.
that had another name. And I'm sorry, I don't remember it now. But that's what it used to be, 204 something.
Well, we'll have to
Yeah. Wow.
revisit that.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay, so then let's move into the citrus here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did this happen? The citrus and you like jumping into it and that sort of thing.
Well, I think I'll take point on that. Our attention was turned to the citrus, honestly, when we heard you speak at a downtown forum that we were hosting for the city and different downtown property owners. And so people were there harping about, you know, we need to change this, we need to do that, we need to bring this. And which is all great, you know, there were a lot of great ideas shared there, but it was when you spoke very passionately about how we should do, or perhaps pay attention to retaining and reserving some of this history in these buildings and what they mean. And when you started talking about the Citrus Theater and what that meant to the community, it was a little before my time, but I really grasped onto that. And so the next day, I got my real estate hat on and hunted down the keys to get access to the building. And once I walked her and saw the bones that she had, you know, with my construction hat on, I was like, wow, you know, this is like a little diamond just here withering away, you know. And so she was basically being used as a storage for files and things of that nature, but we could just see the potential and what she, you know, held. And so again, it was your speech that you gave at that downtown meeting that really turned our attention to that, well, maybe we could do this for the third time. And so, you know, we went there optimistic, you know, that we could do it. But once we really started feeling the community just in the short little conversations that we would have with other people that we were checking, prices or things of that nature, it would come out like, oh, I used to go to that theater. I took the AC guy there to give me a inspection. He's like, oh, I used to work at a theater with my uncle in California, and can I see the theater room? And just, again, in my 19 years of practicing primarily in commercial real estate, I've been a part of transactions I'm very proud of. I assisted Rudy Martinez here with the Chick-fil-A off of 107. I think all of Edinburgh loves Chick-fil-A. And again, although that was a very special project in its own scope, but this has just been eye-opening. The community outreach, the love has just been on another level. And my father and family has done real estate for all my life, again, even they acknowledge how this is very different and special. And so, we're extremely proud, and we talk about it amongst the team, like this is an opportunity, to really give back to Edinburgh and really make an impact and help carry this building, for hopefully another 100 years, because we truly think, she was meant to stand
Last.
forever. And
What before I ask you about the history of the building,
Sure.
because I remember the moment when it was a meeting in your space in Society 204. So you guys must have been new at the time. Was this late 2020, early
It was
21?
June. So the meeting,
it was before the election.
it was June 9th, 2021.
Oh, okay.
I remember this.
Okay.
And so we had been in the space in that particular building a whole year already at that
Right.
point, because we moved in June 1st of 2020.
Yeah.
So we had been in the space in that particular building for a whole year. We had had the expansion site there on the corner since March of 2021 that we had officially moved in. So we've been in completion of, if you will, by that point. But it was still new. It's
Right.
still a new building. We were in the old one for 5 years, so the nuances of finding little nooks and crannies and things like that.
And it definitely took some convincing of the team. We had just done these expansions. COVID was still very, very
Prevalent.
and didn't know the outcome on how that was going to come about. And so we were met with some hurdles, financing, number one, with some hesitations or reservations, better yet, with the nature of the business and the age of the building. But Lone Star National Bank, and I have to say that because they were big help, Daniel de la Viña and his team, on getting us to the finish line with this project, and buying in on the vision and what it could mean for the community and the city of Edinburgh, on how amazing they were on meeting with us out there and meeting with the bankers. I had bankers with flashlights and suits and going through dust and spider webs and trying to figure it out.
And some of them probably had stories as well, right?
Correct,
About
yeah, pretty much.
having been there as a kid.
Correct.
So that was one of the things about that meeting, was that it was about downtown, businesses. And so, we were invited because the museum is downtown, obviously. We're neighbors. But the tone and tenor and direction of the conversation tended to be ahistorical.
Yeah.
So it was about, how do we build new? How do we do this?
Correct.
And so what I was sensing, and so my purpose here is to preserve and present. That's what the museum does. And so I thought, so the way the conversation was going, I thought, you know what, there's going to be some casualties here.
Yeah.
But you stated it very elegantly. I do.
And then you jumped on it. And so by the next day, you're saying that you're already going through the building. Did you go through the building
I
the
did.
next day?
So I got a phone call in the morning and says, "You're gonna think I'm crazy," and Nick has been my best friend for 5 years now at this point, so I'm used to his crazy. And so I said, "Okay, pitch me your crazy." And he said, so I contacted the realtor who has the citrus listed, and I got us an appointment to walk the building. I'm in a dress. I'm in my signature 5-inch heels. I'm thinking, cool, let's go do this. And so we walked the building, and I'll be honest, again, I'm not from Edinburgh, so though I know history, things are not emotionally attached. I'm not emotionally attached to certain buildings. Now I am. Now you want to breathe on the building, and I'm going to have a problem with that kind of a thing now, right? So I thought, okay, let's go see this other old building. And I expected disrepair. I expected spider webs, and I expected layers of dust, and I expected just horrific kind of conditions. And when we walked the building, I was in awe. I was in awe. There's dust, and I'm sure you can see it on the screen right now, but there wasn't what I expected. Things were in such great condition, and like Nick mentioned earlier, there's solid steel I-beams running through that place, and I think it's important to indicate that it's solid steel, because she was built in 1939. So if you know your history, that means that she's pre-World War II steel, pre-World War II cement and concrete. So the material that she has in there, it's of the finest, highest quality, because in 1941, thereafter, once we entered World War II, all the resources were being redirected to the war efforts, and so materials for construction, I don't say deteriorated, but they were of alloys and things like that, whereas Citrus, she's solid as gonna get.
And there's one of the hurdles that we had to clear was a structural inspection of the facility. And so I like to tell this story because the gentleman shows up, this engineer, in a suit coat, just a white shirt. So I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. And I needed his blessing, or I needed a blessing from a structural engineer for the bank. And I promised, and my mother's there too, as my witness. He was like a kid in the candy store. He couldn't believe how the metal and the rafters in the ceiling is actually curved. A lot of people don't know that unless you actually access the ceiling. And so all the metal rafters, even in today's day, to hoist that stuff up, it's almost 4 stories when you take the whole building into consideration. Even today would require all kinds of seals and engineers and cranes. And to think that this was done in that time,
that's a great shot.
so
Yeah.
so
Wow.
right there, every little drop that comes down like that is actually the metal I-beams that run behind that, the rafters. And so definitely we were blown away when he finished there. He was completely dirty and sweaty, and he was just like, this is amazing. You don't see buildings like this. And so, again, just a lot of
Potential.
all along the way. And then when you threw in, once it started getting out in October, it got out, and the Monitor covered a story.
Yeah.
And we had not
Publicized it.
yet, and because we were still navigating the finances of it. But that gave us a little taste of what was to come as
Yeah.
far as support. So it was quite really
Exciting.
exciting. Yeah.
This is a fascinating story here, because what you're doing is you're doing economic development by also preserving history, and you're very mindful of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, speak to that.
Thank you.
Speak to that. Speak to the importance. Speak to how people should listen to this story.
Sure. Again, going back to my leadership hat and traveling and being able to see other cities and how, and using their examples on what they've done and what these cities do to draw people to these very unique buildings that are in these big cities. And so I look at buildings in a very different light. And so I look at, complicated and how difficult or how rare materials are. And so now more than ever, having done 19,000 square feet with buildings of almost 100 years old, and seeing, how you could still preserve yet give it a touch of today's flair. There you go. Thank you. And it is just, the community has been so receptive of it, and now our attention is even more on that, on the details. You know, people always compliment the buildings because of the details. And I agree, you know, back then, you know, you didn't have so many distractions, and, you know, the craftsmen work that went into things were true talents. And again, when you see, you know, certain moldings are done with like plaster, you know, that's really by hand and things of that nature, it's like, wow, you know. I took a piece of the tin to Lowe's to try to get a replacement because there was this one area that was just really bad, and I was trying to preserve it, and the guy looks at it, he's like, how old is this thing? It looks like it's 1,000 years old. I'm like, oh.
It's 100.
What are we looking at here?
So those are pictures of the projection room, and so that was actually that's how we got it.
Yeah.
So those were the original combustion projectors. That's actually where they would splice and then recreate film. And so we were very fortunate that we had the opportunity to open her up and invite the public to tour her. And I know that you came by that weekend to see her, and we had so many stories of people coming in and saying, I used to be a projectionist. I like to tell this story. I'm at Society, and we're a block away from each other, so it's within walking distance, except for me that I'm constantly in heels, so it's a little bit longer of a trek for me. And Nick had gone over to get things ready for that weekend of the farewell tour when we opened her up. And we had been very hesitant to keep the doors open because we didn't want people just perusing through. And he calls me. He's like, I need you to come to the theater right now. And his voice is frantic. And I'm in the projection room. You need to come right now. I'm thinking, oh, Lord, how am I going to carry him down the stairs? And I'm panicking. I'm panicking because I thought he had been injured. So I'm thinking, okay, but he's hurt. I'm going to need to come here. So I ran to the parking lot, then drove the block to the Citrus, run up the stairs in heels to the projection room. There's a gentleman standing there who's not part of our project.
Okay,
And
so as you tell the story, so Pam, if you can go back, if you can show the projector.
There you go.
Okay,
you
and
go.
leave it there.
Perfect.
Go ahead, continue.
So he comes in, and he's talking, and Nick's like, wait, she needs to record this. And I'm thinking, okay, what is going on? So I pull out my phone to start recording. This gentleman happened to be walking by. He says, I happen to be here this weekend, visiting my mom. I used to be a projectionist.
Yeah, he was trying to get tickets to the tour, but wasn't able to reserve a spot, and so he was just driving by. And I promise, I had just opened the door to allow some breeze through, and you know, we've been very mindful of keeping the doors closed. And it hadn't even been 2 minutes, and I'm walking by with a box, and the gentleman's walking in. I'm like, oh, what's this guy? And so he starts off with like, I'm so sorry, you know, I was just in the area. I wanted to see it one last time before it gets, you know, remodeled. I'm on my way back to Fort Worth. He's like, I used to work here. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, cool. What is it that you did? And he's like, I used to work in the projection room. I was like, oh, put this box down. And so he goes up there, and you know, we didn't have a manual on how to use it. So he's like, yeah, you would put this here, you put the rod there, and you hit this, and then you flip this switch, and it should turn on. And the things turned on.
It turned on.
It turned on.
And we were like, what? Yeah. So
oh my God. Okay, Pam, you can come back to us.
So he broke it down to us and explained what all this stuff means. I had negotiated it in the contract. I said that everything in that projection room needed to stay as is, and I'm so glad that we did, because we've been able to now, with time, look through some of that stuff. For example, we found a little notebook of, I'm assuming it's a manager, and it's all time stamped from the 40s, and they would say, this movie, so many people at this time. And so I'm guessing it was this little journal or ledger of movies and how many people attended. So I'm like, wow, you know, we just keep finding neat little artifacts of, you know, how things used to be. You know, we found cigarette boxes and oils and, you know, all kinds of neat things. And so again, it has been exciting, to say the least. It's definitely has our attention. The community that continues to just pour in support, comments. You know, we take screenshots of, you know, we send back and forth, like, look, this person, you know, like, talking about the project and talking about it proudly in the sense of like, they're going to bring it back, whatever it is, we're going to go. And it's just like, again, if you put your real estate hat on, projects like that don't happen, at least not the ones that I've been a part of. And to be able to do that in my hometown, it's really been exciting. Definitely, keeps us up.
I think that building just needed a champion.
Appreciate
I think so. I think
there's a compliment there.
that building needed somebody to because it wasn't an absence of support.
Yeah.
It wasn't an absence of an emotional connection. It wasn't an absence of people valuing the history and the stories. It just needed somebody to come in.
Yeah.
A group to come in and said, you know what, I'll take this.
And credit to Mr. Felipe Garcia because he had a lot of offers, but for attorneys' offices, and to knock it down and to completely do something different, and he wanted to hold on to that. And so a lot of kudos to him for
he would be a champion for a number of years to just hold on to it
Correct.
until
Yeah.
somebody came along.
correct.
Because he had a vision for it too.
Correct. He did. He just at his point, he just felt that keeping it, preserving it, and hopefully somebody would come along and just everything kind of aligned up, and we would talk about it. There was days that it was a little discouraging. The bank had concerns and questions and the nature of the business, and so we appreciate all the hurdles that came, and it helped prepare us for what we feel extremely prepared for what's about to happen. And the team.
So let's hold on to that story because we're gonna go on break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I'd like to talk about the question, what are you gonna do with it?
Okay.
Because I think that the community is probably in anticipation
Okay.
Yeah.
about what's gonna happen. So as we go on break, and so this is part of, I think, the value of being on live, that Aaron Peña sent us a note saying that it's Kreuznit, maybe Krushnit Street.
That sounds German.
So Krushnit was a fellow who was the chairman of the executive committee of the Southern Pacific Railroad, and so his name was Julius Krushnick. And so that Edinburgh soldier who was in the Second World War sent his letters to his mother on Krutz Street.
Wow.
Wow.
How about that?
That is
All right, so when we come back, friends of the Museum of South Texas History, we're gonna really get into the question of what's gonna happen with this space of the Citrus Theater. So stay with us for a bit. Okay, welcome back, friends of the museum. So we turn back to Renee and to Nick because I'm really curious about what is this new iteration of the citrus. You know, because when I went, they had T-shirts there, and I bought a T-shirt. My wife bought a T-shirt, and I should have worn it today, but it says Citrus Live. What does that mean? What's going to happen with this place?
I'll take it if you're okay with that. So, the Citrus Live is our reimagining for the Citrus Theater. We know that the Citrus Theater played host to many movies, the classics, of course, right? Elvis, Casablanca. It also showed newsreels and things like that. So that's how the news was brought to Edinburgh. Tales of World War II, excuse me, Vietnam, Korean War, things like that. But in our iteration of the Citrus Theater, we'd like to bring a little bit more of a live entertainment venue to the space. And so we're looking forward to hosting concerts, comedy shows, weddings, conferences, fashion shows, things of that nature. And so we want to make it a space that's engaging for the community so that it's something that they come to on a frequent basis.
And if I could add, you know, in discussing with the team on what our vision is and events, because obviously those take time to plan, we're really focusing on the experience. Mm-hmm. We talk about that and the details that go into that experience. So for example, the mask and Cameron Diaz when she's singing and you have the band going and everybody's having a grand old time, you know, that kind of experience, we talk about how can we replicate something into that, right? Mm-hmm. We try to get creative. Maybe the bartenders could be in costume or in outfits that kind of complement whatever it is that evening. So we've talked about like the House of Blues. Maybe we could light up the citrus in a blue glow that week and leading up to that event. And people aren't necessarily coming because we have B.B. King's son that's performing. They're coming because, oh, it's the House of Blues. I'm sure it's going to be something cool. And so that experience is what we're really trying to hone in on. How can we make this like almost like feel like a Vegas show, if you may, but you know, still accomplish the live entertainment mm-hmm. aspect of it, comedy shows, and we've one of our tenants is Rock and Roll James, and he's got a show that he produces. And so we've been in discussions on maybe we could replicate something like The Voice, where the community could come out and see talent of that kind of magnitude or setup. And you know, we live in a day where we could broadcast on Facebook or, you know, allow people to still participate at some level. And so again, we understand that the venue doesn't allow for like a Red Hot Chili Peppers band to come and necessarily perform, but we could still give them an experience that they could, you know, really take home with them and remember. You know, that's kind of where our energy has been recently to kind of start, you know, lining things up and start planning. Our goal, and it's an ambitious one, but you know, the goal for the team is to do the lighting of the Christmas tree at the Citrus this year. You know, that would be, to me, if we could accomplish that would be a huge accomplishment and something so awesome, and to open her up on Christmas and invite the community out and pay you know, her a little bit of appreciation. Mm-hmm. And I you know, again, that's kind of our vision. We'll see once we start.
So, in terms of a remodel of the space, mm-hmm. there is at the moment a little stage, mm-hmm. right? And not a large stage. It's Correct. Just, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 feet, if that. I don't. And then, you know, what used to be the screen.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to happen with that? Are you, and with the seating and that sort of thing, how's that going to look?
So, if I may,
yeah.
Going back to listening to the community, obviously being a cinema was going to be challenging, going up against the bigger theaters that show multiple screens. And so we had to get creative. But having that tour and getting the comments, we see that that's something that we need to retain. And so we're doing our best on investigating purchasing rights to certain movies that people used to see there, and perhaps during the week when there's not a big venue coming up, that we could show some of those movies. So the idea is to push the screen back as much as we can, extend the stage out forward, remove the first floor seats, because a lot of the seats did need a lot of upholstery work, and
Repair.
they were a little bit beyond repair in some areas there. But our idea is to make the first floor multi-use, where you would have what we call like a deck and then a pit, right? So we could have from cocktail tables to just round tables or seats for a comedy show or open for a band. It'll allow us to be
Accommodate.
creative on what we could accommodate. Now on the mezzanine and on the third floor, all those seats, our intentions are to be as creative as possible to retain as many of those seats as possible. Those are in better condition. They seem to be a little placed in a certain way that people could access them a little bit easier. So again, our initial plans at the moment are to keep those seats, which are about 275 seats on the mezzanine. And then on the first floor will be open for an array of events. Now, I think something that's going to be unique is that now we'll have tenants that will be anchoring in the Citrus as well. So when you used to walk into the lobby, the little building or the little suite next door, well, now you'll have access to that, where we plan to have
Vintage Hot and Cold Brew, which is a coffee shop out of Weslaco, and CC Sweets out of McAllen. So we'll have a bakery and a coffee shop.
so that you could visit us on a daily basis now and still come and enjoy pastries or coffee available to you on a daily basis.
Wow.
So the Citrus will be open and accessible every single day.
Yeah, because there isn't really a coffee shop within walking distance. I mean, the Grind, I suppose, a couple blocks away.
Correct.
But okay, well, that's interesting. And so the space then will be like a versatile space. So that is there what are you looking at in terms of dimensions for a stage?
Stage, I want to say it extends out either 28 feet or 32 feet from the back wall. And then wide, it's the width of the building, which would be, well, no, I take that back because you still have the ramps on the side. If I had to guess, because I have the plans, probably like 65 feet
Wow.
of width.
So I mean, you are actually replicating a full-sized theater, performance theater,
Correct. So we'll be
with floor space as well to be able to do other things, like people can dance and
Correct.
move around, and
Correct.
conferencing kind of thing you could even do.
Yeah, again, we've put a lot of thought into what that first floor could be used as, and so we've got a lot of creative seating ideas that we've been coming up with versus your traditional, what you see on the screen.
Yeah.
To perhaps even create a different ambiance, if you may, right?
Right.
To kind
Wow.
of give a little bit of that jazz kind of feel as well.
When does the remodeling begin?
So we're currently in the fund stage, which is permitting, and again, the city has been very accommodating, but as we continue to explore, ideas continue to come up, and so we're at the MEP stage, which we're in the finalizing of that with the plans, and we're with permitting. Before this taping, we were with the EDC. We had a lengthy meeting with them and kind of presenting some of our ideas and vision that we see for the entire area there. So we might have some more exciting news to come. But
Wow.
but for the moment, the Citrus
Is the
is
focus.
100% a go, and we're well on our way to
Wow.
start.
Is there like on the stage itself? Will there be like a back walkthrough
So currently you have on the sides where you have those curvatures where you access the stage. So that's going to stay on one side, on the, I guess that would be the south side of the building, where you would have handicap accessibility and emergency exit. So the stage will have access on that side. And we still are going to try to retain that curvature. We're going to redo them at the new length of the stage, but what you see from the stage perspective will stay, but the ceiling, we're currently exploring at really giving it a unique feel. Again, kind of revisiting that the roof is curved. We want to expose that some way to the public, so kind of give it a whole new feel there.
Somebody just said here, Adamina says that she saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show there. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, wow. I mean, because I think what you're describing is probably suited for that kind of, I mean, it sounds like what you're describing is suited for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so last thoughts on this.
Not being a native Edinburghian, I don't know what the native from Edinburgh. I don't want to butcher that. I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled to be part of something that means so much to others. You know, I'm always telling Nick, like, oh, I talked to so-and-so and they're really excited about what you're doing. And he always constantly corrects me. No, it's us. It's the team. It's a whole. But for me, you know, as somebody who used to be on the outside looking in on things like this, I'm still not used to being part of things like this. So where he's got 19 years of real estate experience and being out in the community and things like that, this is still very new to me. I mean, 5 years is still very new being part of things like this. And so I'm thrilled. I soak it all in and I take things very much with a grain of salt. And so when the community shares things, I get very like emotional about it. And so I want to say that there was one young lady. There was a young woman who came into the Citrus and we were doing a tour, and she was in tears. She didn't have a ticket to enter, but she wanted just one last moment to sit in the seats that she sat in with her high school sweetheart, who then she married, who then she lost 4 years ago. And they sat in the same seats every time they came to the Citrus. So I held her hand and I escorted her up there and she got to sit there. Well, then she calls the Citrus phone line about 3 weeks ago. Just wanted to touch base. Just wanted to see how you guys were doing. And then she asked, she says, I can't remember the young man's name who bought the building. So I told her Nick Cantú, and she says, do you mind if I pray for you and Nick over the phone? And so she said a prayer for us and for the project over the phone. And you can't buy that kind of support. You can't fake that kind of support. And I think for me, that's been the biggest takeaway, the biggest draw is that people really want to see this happen. And they've wanted to see this happen. And I think they're just so ecstatic that somebody believed enough in that building that that little spark that he got from that meeting with you, he took it and ran with it. Because other people would have said, oh yeah, that's a great idea, and then sat on it and nothing would have happened. But those people aren't Nick.
Yeah, well, I mean, those people are most of us. But it takes somebody with a kind of gumption, you know, and experience, and access and confidence.
And honestly, the confidence stems from the team. You know, like I mentioned, from Renee to my parents to my brother, you know, to everybody that's been a part of this. You know, that support is what continues to push us forward. You know, again, poor Renee gets the phone calls of, I got a crazy idea, but when the community, it almost seems like they come in just at the right time. There's a story, and I'll share it next time with the group, but when I was walking with the bank and I had the bankers there, this gentleman shows up just out of the blue, again going back to having the door open, and you know, I had all the bankers there, and this gentleman's asking me like, hey, you know, this would be a great place to have concerts, and this would be a great place to have
kind
a
of
coffee
interrupting
shop.
the meeting.
And he was saying everything that I had told the bank. to the point where when we were walking back with the bankers, I had to say, guys, I swear I do not know who that guy was. And so my parents joke with me that he was like our little guardian angel that day, because he did say everything that we had been talking about to the bankers. And when you, when you talk about signs, it's stuff, from the community, things like that just kind of just keep falling into place. And to say we're excited, is
The
not
understatement of
an
the year.
understatement.
So
Yes.
you never found out who that fellow was?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, I know that I believe he used to work, or he worked for the Border Patrol, because I caught that part. My parents were there, and I told them, I was like, get this guy out of here, please. And I turn around, and the guy's standing right behind me. He's like, can I take this oil can home? I'm like, no, put it down, please. And he's like, man, it's just that this place is so amazing. And if I had all the money, I would do this, and I would do that, and the coffee shop. And when he was saying this, I was like, holy cow, this guy's like, I'm gonna let him keep talking.
Yeah, he's
Wow.
just plucking
And even the
from-
bankers laughed. They were like, yeah,
Mm.
sure, we don't, but we still talk about that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who that gentleman was, but it was
serendipity.
perfect.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Renee, and thank you, Nick,
Of
for
course, thank
doing this, and also for for rushing from your meeting with the Economic Development Corporation of the City of
Absolutely.
Edinburgh over here to make this show.
Well, it is a team effort, and what you do for the museum and the community is so important. And again, I thank you for sharing and being even just confident enough to stand in front of everybody to pitch that. Again, super impressed and thankful that you did that, because if not, we probably wouldn't be sitting here.
Mm.
So it's going back to the signs and how things line up. I could tell you about other signs that Renee
Yeah.
knows that just like how we got to keep going.
Yeah.
And so
And it was like every time we kind of hit a roadblock, or the opportunity kind of presented itself that we could walk away, then something else would come in and say no. It was kind of
Wow.
very much that wind beneath our wings sort of thing that
Yeah.
just gave us the reassurance.
and again, I'm always very optimistic, right? And so, but my team around me keeps reassuring that no, we are on the right path. And when the community chimes in too, it's just like, yeah, we got to keep going. And that's
Wow.
why we stay up late, and that's why we
Get up early.
get up early and have 2-hour meetings with the EDC. And again, kudos to the city. I've worked with other cities where we're having to chase down certain departments and certain people of importance, like the fire department, and rightfully so. They've got a lot of responsibilities. But coming to Edinburgh, the guys are like, here's my number. If you have any questions, call me. If you have questions with the architect, call me. We had a little preliminary meeting we thought with the city we were going to have with one staff. We had the whole room. They
All
were
the
bringing in
departments.
chairs, all the departments. And I'm like, this doesn't
Happen.
And so
But even the like people that we've consulted with on the project, we've been really fortunate that like we'll call a state, hey, we need somebody that does specific certifications, and I'll call a number and oh yes, I'm calling about this project. And at the beginning it was like trying to be very hush hush with it. And when I'd say, oh yeah, I'm calling about this interest, I'll be right over. They would drop everything. Instead of setting a meeting 3 weeks away, it was I'll be there this afternoon.
when I set up a meeting with the waste department or solid waste department, he was on a phone call, and he's like, it is the project that we were talking about. I gotta go. He's walking up to the truck, and I heard that over his truck, and I'm like, wow, that. And again, it's been that support and that attitude that just keeps us pushing forward. And so
Well,
We're excited.
It seems to me that this is such a story that almost is like a metaphor for how history is important.
Mm-hmm.
When people's stories and histories are curated in respectful and inspiring ways, it helps people. It helps the community, and so that is, I think, what you guys are doing. So,
thank you.
congratulations and thank you. And I look forward to our next segment, because the next segment is going to be on the opening.
Yeah.
And so how do we now bring history
to life.
alive, you
Yeah.
know, and I mean that's the Citrus Live thing. That's the T-shirt, Citrus Live.
And for anybody that has, you know, any comments or wants to stop by, I mean, Society 204, we're there in the corner. Please, we've had the other day we had somebody come in and drop in 2 sheets of the original building plans, and so we took that and got them laminated and, you know, dissecting that. It had a seal. I reached out to the company that had done it. So again, you know, this has definitely been a community project without a doubt, and you know, we're
excited.
listening.
All right.
We're
Well,
definitely listening.
on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you to our friends of the Museum of South Texas History. So this has been the June 2022 installment of Museum Pláticas. We will see you next month. Thank you for being with us.